Women's Asia Cup, and it's time for the second encounter, second day, and it's between Sri Lanka, the host, are finally stepping onto the field against Bangladesh. Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, when it comes to men's cricket, we know there is an arch rivalry that has come up red hot in the last couple of years. But when it comes to women's, I want to know, how is their rivalry? Is it just cold enough, just sticking to cricket, or is it outside the ground as well? I have one of the best women for that. I have Damini in the screen with today for us. Damini, welcome to the show. Finally, after a long, long time. But when it comes to women's cricket, you may say about India as well, who are red hot favorites for sure. But talking about the host, Sri Lanka, they also have some brilliant squad led by a wonderful captain alongside our opponents, Bangladesh.
First of all, thank you so much, Preetham. Once again, it's always a delight to be on your show and work with you, collab with you. And Women's Asia Cup, of course, it's like one of my personal favorite tournaments ever when it comes to women's cricket. And talking about cricket, see, I think recently at least Indian cricket is still basking in the glory. The 10-year drought has finally been broken by the men. And, I would personally ask our Indian women's team that when the men have broken that drought, it's the women who should take forward the flag from here. And they have all the potential
Absolutely.
in the world, isn't it? Because come on,
Absolutely.
seven-time Asian champions. They are entering this tournament as defending champions.
Yep.
So it's a cracker of a tournament. And of course the Indian team starts as hot favorites, the Indian women's team, but that does not mean we are to write off the other competitors, because
Absolutely.
see, the men's World Cup which just concluded, what do we get to see? That the so-called lower ranked teams were actually giving tough competitions to the top teams, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Did we ever expect a USA beating a Pakistan? Did we ever expect an Afghanistan actually
Make it to the
eliminating
semis.
Australia? Did we ever expect that? But that's happening. So
Absolutely.
that means sport is turning, sport is changing, and it's changing for the better. And as they say, change is the only constant. And it's about time the women start doing it. Let's talk about Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, two very, very good sides. Sri Lanka, of course, the host. Sri Lankan cricket, I have been covering Sri Lankan women's cricket for quite some time. And, in one of my projects, what I noticed was that the 2022 ODI World Cup for the women's, why did Sri Lanka miss out on that? And it was a very big jolt for them. Because when I
Okay.
was going through the news, when I was like just, digging out all the news, so the Sri Lankan women, especially the captain, all they had to say was that because of the COVID, the COVID hitting in the year 2020, unfortunately, Sri Lanka's economy went for a toss. We all know
Oh,
that
yes.
very
Oh,
unfortunate turn of events. It took almost 2 years for Sri Lanka to bounce back. And of course, there's this very dirty universal rule that whenever something bad happens, usually the minorities of any country, and unfortunately the minorities are still women, unfortunately, women still have to prove themselves no matter how talented they are. Unfortunately for Sri Lanka's case, the women cricketers suffered a major jolt. They had to miss out on that ODI World Cup because they missed out on 2 years of precious
correct.
time in practice. So for them, the major tournament is, see, they will have to take this Women's Asia Cup very, very seriously. The good thing is that they are getting to host it. So economically, it's a huge boost for Sri Lanka. And secondly, they have to take it very seriously because this is like that pre-boards before the ultimate boards, that is the T20 World Cup coming up in October. So Sri Lanka cannot afford to slip up from here. That's the first thing.
Yep.
As for Bangladesh, Bangladesh have been the champions once. Back in 2017, they were the champions. And believe it or not, they beat India in the finals. Did anybody ever expect that? Of course, anybody
Yeah.
would. It was a nail-biting finish. Everybody had thought India would win, but Bangladesh just jumped and they snatched victory from India, and they were the champions in 2017. So that means Bangladesh know how to win. They are struggling, but they have the talent. So I think it's going to be a cracker of a contest when these two sides meet.
Absolutely, and you summed it up really well. But you were hinting towards Team India as well. We have India versus Pakistan today evening, Damini. It's red hot, to be honest. Starting with that blockbuster clash, how do you look into India into this Asia Cup as favorites or not?
It's always a mouth-watering contest, isn't it? India versus Pakistan, be it the men's, be it the women's. Men's, I think the rivalry off the field is a much talked about topic than the on-field rivalry. But no, talking about the sporting point of view, I think the women's rivalry between India and Pakistan has always been very polished, because we've never seen the women cricketers going hard against each other,
Absolutely.
or passing comments. There's a lot of mutual respect between both the Indian and the Pakistani women for each other. They respect each other in terms of talent, in terms of thought process. And of course, if India is beyond adjectives now, because they are so talented. They're like 7-time champions, hot favorites. But Pakistan, you can never write them off. But a major jolt, I would say, uh, very recently, their captain Bisma Maroof, she took retirement. She has retired. She's retired a legend. Just take a look at her. And
Absolutely.
for all
Absolutely.
those people who feel that a woman after getting married and having kids can't balance her career, Bisma Maroof is a huge slap on their faces. That you can be a married woman, you can be a mom, and you can captain your side, and a
Absolutely.
country like Pakistan. So Bisma Maroof is one of my personal favorite women in when it comes to that breaking shackles thing, because she has
Absolutely.
proven
Yeah.
herself beyond criticisms, beyond talks. So her retiring might be a bit of a jolt for Pakistan, because she knew the dynamics within the team very well. But there are some excellent talents coming up. There's I can't even name them individually, because this entire team is so good. And last year also, if I would like to mention that in the group stage, although India were the ultimate champions, they beat Sri Lanka in the final. But in
Yeah.
the group stage, you would remember that it was Pakistan who beat India in the
Pakistan
nail
defeated
biter,
them. Yep.
right?
Yep.
So you can never decide.
Never write
Definitely,
off them.
India are 7-time champions, but group stage it was Pakistan who had won. So I would say it's going to be
Absolutely.
a mouth-watering contest between two very good sides, India and Pakistan, and I'm
Absolutely.
more
We
than
all
eager to watch it.
Absolutely. You are there. Even I am there as well. We are all waiting for this clash to kickstart today evening, 7 p.m. at Jambula. But when it comes to India, Pakistan, we always say 50-50 clash. I must tell you on the screen as well, if you see Sri Lanka versus Bangladesh, you can also say when it comes to women's as well as men, it's always a 50-50 clash. What are the forms they're coming into a T20 format forms into the Asia Cup? Let's take a look. Not an ideal kind of form for both the sides. For the host, they're coming out of 2 defeats and a win, but for the visitors, Bangladesh, 3 back-to-back losses for them. So they're not coming off wins that will give them confidence. So how do you look into these kind of conditions at Dambula, where you think that the spinners will definitely come onto the play? Both the teams have good enough spinners in their ranks as well. So how do you look, and how much will you rely on your spinners, your batters to score runs on the board to get that W straight away in your points table?
I personally feel here that Sri Lankan spinners might just outnumber Bangladeshi spinners. Why I tell you is because Sri Lanka, of course, home conditions. Sri Lankan players know how the pitch is going to behave. But if you keep aside that, also I think the quality of spinners in the Sri Lankan side is a little better as compared to Bangladesh. Especially if you take the names of certain players here, like I'm personally looking forward to the spin duo of Shashini Gimhani and Sugandhika Kumari, because these two have been like, if these two are actually selected in Sri Lanka's squad, the final
Mhm.
playing 11, which it should be, because Dambula is like that
Absolutely.
spinner. It's a very spinner friendly ground, and if the spin duo is selected to be a part of the playing 11 for Sri Lanka, I think they can give Bangladesh a very tough time. But now coming to Bangladesh's squad, for Bangladesh, I would really have to give it to Sultana Khatun. Like
Absolutely. Yep.
Sultana Khatun is the only prominent name there, and unfortunate for Bangladesh, Sultana doesn't have a backup to support her. Now, if they can come up with something, because Bangladesh is very much too much reliant on their pace bowlers. Now, if
Mhm.
the pacers can provide some help to Sultana, then Bangladesh can give a fight to Sri Lanka.
Absolutely, can give a fight. You may never know on the given day if they can come out of top. Team form doesn't look promising for either of the sides, but the pressure will be definitely on both the sides. More on the host because they will play at their home ground at Jambula. But what about the fixtures for these two teams? Let's take a look at the fixtures of the Asia Cup for Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. Starting with the host, which is Sri Lanka, they kickstart with Bangladesh tomorrow rather. I'm so sorry for that. So how important is the opening clash for these two sides, Damini, if I come to you? Because you see the comparative, the other two teams, you have to get a win in order to secure a spot as 3 out of 3, I can potentially say, for Sri Lanka.
The fixtures look good. Fixtures definitely look good for see. I would, if you ask me personally, I think better prepared would be Sri Lanka here, because they have, see, the biggest thing that comes to Sri Lanka every time, if you're talking about this Women's Asia Cup, is that the home advantage thing,
Correct.
and Sri
Yeah.
Lanka should make the most out of it. That's the first thing. The fixtures, I think there is ample break time, there is ample practice time, there is ample rest time. The fixtures look good. Fixtures look really, really good. And the good
So they
thing is
play in
that
alternative days, and they have Malaysia
alternative,
and Thailand,
and
the other two games.
yeah, and the good thing is that the venue is not changing. So that
Correct.
means, so this one, advantage that the teams are getting is they can actually, even if they make mistakes, they will know that the pitch is the same, and they wouldn't want to repeat the same mistakes
Correct.
there. They have the same ground, that okay, these are the mistakes, they get to study it, and they get to correct their mistakes. So that's a good thing,
Absolutely.
that there's not too much of changing in the venues.
Absolutely, that's absolutely correct, Dambula. We need to see how many pitches are going to be played there, but that's going to be really interesting for you to say that. Boy, going on to Bangladesh as well, how can they upset the host? If they can make something out of this game against Sri Lanka, if they can produce an upset, I'll be very honest, then they have a chance to win against Thailand and Malaysia and maybe top the group instead of Sri Lanka.
Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, both, I would say they would have the upper edge over Malaysia and Thailand, because of the frequency of the cricket that these two particular nations, I'm referring to Sri Lanka and Bangladesh here, that they play. Malaysia and Thailand are playing, they have just started playing, but Sri Lanka
Correct.
and Bangladesh, compared to them, are veterans in world
Absolutely.
cricket. So I would say that Sri Lanka and Bangladesh hold a much, not just an upper edge, but a much upper edge to Malaysia and Thailand here.
So you're saying they are definitely favorites to march on to the next stage, Sri Lanka and
Yeah,
Bangladesh, just
yeah,
like
yeah.
predicting India and Pakistan from the other group. If not, Nepal makes something surprising. Okay, so the schedule is done and dusted. Let's take a look into the top 3 players to watch out for in this game. So, Damini, here are my choices for the top 3 players to watch out for. Chamari Atapattu, the captain of Sri Lanka. Kavisha Dilari, a very, very promising all-rounder. Nilakshi De Silva, the wicket-keeper batsman for Sri Lanka. Going into Bangladesh, you have Sigar Sultana Jyoti is there. You have Murshida Khatun as well and Nahida Akhtar. So, 6 players in your list. How much do you agree with me? The same as well? If yes, if you can sum it up all these 6 players, please.
No, I'll say here, I agree with you completely, because the selection is perfect. Starting with Bangladesh, alphabetically I'll go. So for Bangladesh, see, Nigar Sultana Jyoti, for a very long time, ever since Salma Khatun gave up her captaincy, after Salma Khatun, Nigar Sultana Jyoti has captained Bangladesh to the best of her capability. Yes, the only thing is that somewhere Nigar is missing out on, enabling Bangladesh to make that uppercut, to push that extra edge, to move on. Like, group stage cannot always be
Correct.
your ultimate goal. You should start aiming for the quarterfinals and the semifinals, because every other team is doing. If you want to see, I'm not comparing, but I'm just trying to set an example here, that if you
Absolutely.
want to compete with top teams, like champion teams like India, who are
Absolutely.
7-time champions, no one's asking you to ultimately win the title. See, Bangladesh has had the capability of beating India in a final, so Bangladesh should have that self confidence in them. But the ultimate thing is that, after all, India are 7-time champions,
Absolutely.
and if you are not winning the title, at least make yourself that capable that you start entering quarterfinals and semifinals as well, which unfortunately Bangladesh is not being able to. And Negar, as a captain, should start upgrading herself. Rest of the players, Nahida Akhtar is now eventually coming up as a very handy all-rounder as well. Batting, bowling, she's balancing both. Murshida Khatun has been too good. Bangladesh looks good. For Sri Lanka, come on. I'll personally say in this rivalry, Sri Lanka is my favorite. And among these three, the first name that you've mentioned here, Chamari Atapattu, she is my spirit woman when it comes to Sri Lankan cricket because
Absolutely.
she is
But I've asked this
unbelievable.
before as well. I'm sorry to cut you, Damini, but I've asked this before as well. Has she been really unlucky not to be part of the different domestic leagues, including the WPL as well?
Yes, she has been. I personally feel she there's a I wouldn't be using some terms here because censored, but I think it was wrong to completely overlook her because she owned 2023. She literally owned 2023. She was the number one
Absolutely.
ranked. Even in recent times, she's the one of the number one ranked batters around the world. And even after being number one ranked, if you have to be overlooked in such fashion in a WPL, even in a domestic league, it's bound to take a toll on you.
Absolutely.
And Chamari had expressed her disappointment, very rightly so, that even
Absolutely.
after working so hard, if you have to be still answerable that why you deserve to have a contract, then something is seriously wrong. But Chamari
Correct.
Atapattu, I have done a story on Chamari Atapattu, an audio story where I was covering her when she was ruling 2023. Chamari Atapattu is unbelievably assertive. She's like that one woman army for Sri Lanka, batting, bowling. If Chamari Attapattu gets going at least the first 5 overs for Sri Lanka, then the opposition
That,
needs to
that's,
really
that's
start giving up.
absolutely
The opposition needs to start giving up because Sri Lanka are winning it. But now comes the big but for Sri Lanka, that too much over reliance on Chamari Attapattu. If
yeah.
Chamari Attapattu gets dismissed on that
Doesn't get
golden
going.
duck or very cheaply, then Sri Lanka completely collapse. So there's a lot too much over dependence on Chamari. Like 90% of the thing Chamari always has to do for Sri Lanka. So the others
Correct.
have to take the burden away from her.
Absolutely correct. And talking about the other two players, Kavisha Dilari, as you expressed as well before, very, very talented all rounder. Nilakshi De Silva, if you can, there's a wicket keeper batsman as well. I just little bit want to know. I know other captains as well. If you can say a little bit of Sultana Jyoti, her leadership skills before we move on to the next proceedings. Is she how good a leader is she when it comes to the shortest format of the game?
Like I said, I had actually summed up that Nigar is doing a fantastic job in the group stage, but she's missing out. She is you know, finding her comfort zone only in the group stage. She needs to upgrade her captaincy, that she has to now start enabling Bangladesh that they can now qualify for quarterfinals and finals, which Chamari Atapattu is doing.
Correct.
It's a different thing that Sri Lanka lost the final to India last year, and in a very one-sided fashion they lost, but at least they qualified for the finals. So this Sultana Jyoti needs to start doing.
Absolutely. So you have summed it up pretty much well. The players to watch out for as well. Let's take a look into the predicted playing 11. So here it is, Damini. On the left hand side of your screen, you have the Sri Lankan playing 11. On the right hand side, you have the Bangladesh playing 11. I have done my best to go with a balanced side for both of them, going with more spin friendly conditions. So spinners will be dominating. If you can let me know how many changes are you going to make, including both the sides.
The playing 11s look good. I'm continuously having my focus on Sri Lanka only because Sri Lanka is like one of my personal favorite teams in women's cricket when it comes to only talking about only Asian cricket. After India, of course, Sri Lanka is
Correct.
one of my personal favorites. So let's start with Sri Lanka only. Openers, I'm in the openers section. I'm definitely looking forward to Vishmi and Chamari. But what Vishmi Gunaratne needs to do is take away the load from Chamari, because Chamari will go
Absolutely.
all guns blazing. We know
Too many dot
she
balls
goes
will just, yeah.
yeah, she goes all hammers and tongs, but it doesn't have to be 90-10, 90 Chamari and 10 Vishmi. It has to be, even if it's not 50-50, at least 60-40.
70
40%
30
contribution
bits.
from
Yeah.
Vishmi has to be there. In the spin department, see, I like I said before, I'm again repeating, I am looking forward to this duo of uh, Sugandhika Kumari and Shashini Girnhani. This is the
Yep.
spin duo I'm looking forward to. Though I don't think Shashini's name has been mentioned here, and Sugandhika, yeah. This spin duo will have a lot on them to, ensure they dismantle Bangladesh's batting. Now, coming to Bangladesh's batting, uh, Bangladesh's batting and bowling is not equal. Like in some match, only their batting clicks, in some match only their bowling clicks. It's not always
Agreed.
equal.
Yeah.
it's not always equally both departments are clicking for them, so they are missing it out there. And of course, again, too much dependence on certain players, like too much dependence there'll be on Shorna Akhtar, Marufa Akhtar, Nigar Sultana to deliver for them. It has to be a balanced performance from Bangladesh, otherwise the predicted playing 11s look good.
Okay, so you have saying that predicted playing 11 looks good. You're tilted towards the host. Let's take a look into the predictions time and see what Damini has to say about it. So it's predictions time, Damini. Chamari Attabattu versus Sultana Jyoti. Sri Lanka versus Bangladesh here. First game for the host. Similarly, first game for Bangladesh as well. What's your prediction? What's your percentage? Are you going with a 50-50 clash or what's your percentage?
No, I would give it 70-30. 70 Sri Lanka, 30 Bangladesh.
Okay, 70-30 towards the home team, Sri Lanka. And from the beginning of the day, from the beginning of the shoot, she has been tilting towards the Sri Lankans. She thinks they are heavyweights in this clash, especially, and they might just make it through into the Asia Cup, progressing semi-final, finals, maybe mid-team India. We will never know. So thank you so much, Damini. Thank you to all the viewers for watching this video. Sri Lanka versus Bangladesh tomorrow. It's a very, very important clash for both these sides, not coming out of a lot of victories in the recent past. Don't forget to subscribe to Fifth Umpire, press the bell icon as well. So thank you so much, and bye-bye.